Seven, DynCorp, Haiti, and me. If you watched the episode this morning, I talked about some of the connections to the organ harvesting and sex trafficking that DynCorp seems to find its way into every time there's a UN peacekeeping mission. They also seem to be in the habit of testing drugs and viruses, and then the vaccines that solve those viruses in all these countries, Kosovo, Bosnia, then all over Africa. I'm trying to find a country where that didn't happen in Africa, and then Haiti. And as I've said before, Haiti's kind of this test case or this kind of stepping stone to bring things into the United States. We'll get to Chicago. We'll get to Home and Square, I promise. Again, Doug Coe, the Brotherhood is formed by the CIA. These are kind of like the strikebreakers. These are like Rockefeller strikebreakers is the best way I could say it. The Rockefeller had his Pinkertons, which is kind of like the RFBI, for enforcement. But then you don't want the actual dirty work to be done by the FBI, so you have an informant group. And that's going to be strikebreakers in the case of Rockefeller, and in the case of the U.S., it's going to be a guy like Doug Coe and the Brotherhood. Again, he's inviting probably the worst butcher of since Idi Amin to the prayer breakfast on Thursday. So this Operation Underground Railroad, I'm pretty sure I got that right. I'm pretty sure Chris or Evan McMullen is going to be behind that, and the operation going all the way back to the 2002 Salt Lake City games. I believe there was a brownstone run back then. I also think the Elizabeth Smart Foundation, with her abduction, she was abducted much like this and raped. She said she was raped 4 times a day for many years. I think that's going to be connected as well, and I think the merger of the Operation Underground Railroad and the Elizabeth Smart Foundation is going to be made so that the independence of the Elizabeth Smart Foundation and the independent oversight is going to be taken away. It's going to be all under Operation Underground Railroad. So that's kind of the update there. I won't go into the Mormon connection here other than to say there is a kind of this is kind of more Israeli again, so this is my Israeli speaking, that there at the University of Denver, at the CIA, there's this, ever since the beginning of the CIA, there's been this injection into the Mormon community, this idea of the CIA officer that's a polygamist and that has a lot of children, and that's A-OK. It's kind of an appeal to the more extreme side of the Mormon Church, and many of those are CIA officers. So again, I'm talking about a very extreme situation where there's the polygamy in the Mormon Church and a lot of secrecy as well. A lot of those folks are, again, in the disruption. They call them the soldiers. The guys are going to be the soldiers of the disruption. Top Secret America, I won't go into this too much more other than to say this is where we need oversight. This is where we need to, I went into, supposedly on the site, you should be able to type in your zip code and see all the intelligence agencies or operatives like, let's say the Mormon Church, or whatever the sect is. You should be able to see that these are the strike breakers, or whatever you want to call them, operatives, informants that are operating in your area, so that there's some oversight, but there's no oversight at all. We don't even know the names of the organizations. So and again, these Joint Terrorism Task Force was set up by 12 military intelligence or 12 military organizations in the CIA. So, and I have the presidential decision directive that says that as well. It says the CIA will instruct the FBI on disruption techniques, so these informant disruption techniques. So I talked a little bit about this Siga Thomas. Now, he's a Foreign Service officer, and the last thing I want to do is say anything bad about a Foreign Service officer, but it just an interesting thing about this DuPont Underground is it's kind of cloaked in a lot of mystery. Things are happening underneath here with tunnels and so forth. And pizza places are open and then they're closed a year later, etc. So again, this kind of looks like one of those brownstone type operations where you're going to be bringing people in and having a kind of an art cover to cover what it was before. This is an art project if you haven't seen it. But I drill in a little bit more onto this gentleman here. If you look into his background, while he's a Foreign Service officer, and he's going to be a Foreign Service officer in Haiti and Bolivia, Niger, Spain, also in Pakistan. There's a 2-year gap. Usually the Foreign Service officers do 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. They keep them moving because they don't want to get too friendly with any one set of politicians. Venezuela is, I'm missing the 2006 to 2008. Here he is with a bunch of Afghanistani kids on Earth Day. And again, it just seems like, maybe there'd be a better use of your time someplace else rather than, at Earth Day, I don't know, meeting with trade representatives and so forth. Afghanistan, DynCorp has the contract of maintaining Karzai's safety, and it's known for runaway bribery and so forth. So it seems like maybe the Foreign Service officers would be more making sure that the USAID money got spent where it should be rather than being at Earth Day, but that's just me. Interestingly enough, Siga here comes into Haiti 2004 to 2006 as a political military officer. I believe he then goes to Venezuela. There's a 2-year missing gap in his resume. I believe he goes to Venezuela. Then he goes to Bolivia. I believe he's kind of following. He starts off as a political military officer, then he becomes a political officer, and I believe that's kind of following mining. It's going to be mining for Bolivia, for Niger. Bolivia is going to be tin mining. Then he goes to Niger. I think that's going to be uranium mining. Then he goes to Spain. I'm not really sure what that's going to be, but then and then Pakistan. So anyway, if Cheryl Mills wasn't his boss and all the other stuff wasn't happening, I probably wouldn't even call this out. But anyway, so anyway, I'll just leave it right there. That's a good summary for right now.